Hello everyone, this is Mumbo and welcome back to another Redstone video, and in this one we're going to be taking a look at 10 Redstone projects for novices. Now this follows on from my recent video about 10 Redstone projects for beginners that a lot of you seem to find really quite useful. There were tons of positive comments down there, and I thought what I'd do is step it up a gear, make things a tiny bit more complicated, so that those of you who have played around with Redstone occasionally but still want to learn a few bits and pieces could use this video accordingly. Now this is going to work exactly the same as the previous one. I'm going to explain what I want you guys to build, you're then going to go away and build it, then I'm going to show you my solution and we can compare the results. I think it's a pretty cool idea, so let's crack on. Now one of the many comments that I received on the previous video about Redstone projects for beginners is the fact that none of those builds featured any bud switches. Now that's quite simply because I thought they were a slightly more advanced Redstone feature, so the first challenge for today's video is make this piston detect block update, and the name of that is of course the bud switch. So for example, if I place a block here, I want the redstone lamp to flash on, then turn off. Crack on with that, and then I'll show you what I've got. Now this is the design that I've ended up with, and as always I feel the need to mention that if yours looks a little bit different but is still functioning, that's the correct answer. There's hundreds of different ways of configuring these things. As long as it works, then we're all good. But anyway, the way that my one works is we've got this redstone block right here that will extend it in front of this redstone, which will unpower all of the top bits. Now the way that the bud switch itself actually works is this redstone here is powering this block, which is technically powering this piston due to quasi-connectivity, but the piston hasn't realized it yet until you cause it a block update. That's essentially it. You cause it a block update and then suddenly it realizes, oh, I'm actually powered, I should be extended. It extends outwards, which unpowers all of the redstone, meaning that it all retracts, resets to its default state, and we end up with the bud switch. So for this next challenge, we're going to be staying in a similar vein here with the bud switches. I want you to make this piston toggle the lamp when the piston is updated, and the name of this one is the bud flop. Now one thing that I quickly want to mention is if you do want more information about both the bud switch and the bud flop, I have done videos on that in the past. I'll put all of them down in the description. That should give you all the info that you need to crack on with these. But anyway, start building and then I'll take a look. So this here is the solution. As you can see, when we place this block causing the piston to block update, it actually powers this lamp constantly until we remove the block, in which case the lamp turns off. Now this circuit here will look incredibly similar to this circuit over here, but the way that we've done this is we've actually changed the location of the redstone. You see this redstone dust right here? When that piston is extended, then that redstone unpowers, it actually updates the piston arm, which in turn updates the piston, causing it all to retract. With this one, we don't have any of that going on. This redstone is way out the way of the piston arm. We only have this repeater here, which doesn't actually cause updates in this location, which means that our piston will actually stay extended when it is updated until it is updated once again. As I say, these two are relatively advanced concepts and they're quite difficult to get your head around, so I would suggest referring to the links down in the description. Thankfully, we are now leaving behind all of that block update detector nonsense. It's time to take a look at some good old-fashioned redstone. I want you to make this lamp flash when the lever is turned off, and this is known as a falling edge monostable circuit. As always, if you need a hand with this one, I'd suggest googling it, but when we turn the lever on, nothing should happen. When we turn the lever off, that lamp should flash on. Now this circuit should look fairly familiar for those of you who followed along with the 10 Redstone projects for beginners, because as you can see here, we've got the good old-fashioned monostable circuit there, involving the sticky piston facing upwards with the block on top. But as you can see here, we have a redstone torch running into some redstone, which is going straight into the monostable, and that's because we want this to activate on the falling edge. So the way that this thing works is when we flick this lever once, you can see that our piston retracts, and that means that when we flick it on, that redstone will power, meaning that it will go through that block, through the repeater, and straight into the redstone lamp. So let's take a look again. We turn it off, nothing happens. We turn it back on, and the redstone lamp flashes. Okay, we are now moving on to some of the slightly more tricky builds over here. They are signified by the orange wool on top. So first off, I want you to create a silent T Flipflop that toggles this lamp on and off. Now you remember what a T Flipflop is, hopefully from the previous set of tutorials, so you shouldn't have any issues here. Now the solution that I've come up with is a little bit on the strange side. It uses locked repeaters and things to work, but what we've got is a redstone clock right here, as you can see, and then over here we've got this repeater, which is stopping the redstone clock. So this repeater here is locking this repeater, meaning that our redstone clock isn't going around, but when we hit this button, it allows the redstone clock to travel around for half a cycle, then it relocks it. Now what that means is that it actually changes state. As you can see, this block here is our output, and that runs into the redstone lamp. When we hit the button, it sort of halfway goes round, then the clock locks again, and we get ourselves an off lamp, then we hit it again, and the redstone lamp turns on, and yes, that's basically how this T Flipflop works. Next challenge, I want you to make it so that one button turns the lamp on, and the other button turns the lamp off, and this is known as an RSNOR Latch. So let me do some explaining. When I hit this button here, I want the redstone lamp to turn on. When I hit the button again, I want the redstone lamp to stay on, which means that you're not able to use a T Flipflop for this one, because that would have toggled it on and off. Then of course, if I hit the off button, I want the lamp to turn off, and if I hit the off button again, I want the lamp to stay off. You get the idea. It sounds relatively simple, but it actually involves a little bit of redstone logic, so I'd suggest Googling it if you do get a little bit stuck. So this is my solution to the problem. I think it's relatively simple. What we've got here is two droppers facing into one another. Then we have a comparator output from this dropper over here running into this block, which goes into this redstone lamp. So when I hit this button here, which is the on button, this block will get powered, meaning the item inside that dropper will move across into this dropper, meaning that we get ourselves a comparator output. And of course, if I hit this button again, that will power that dropper, which doesn't have anything in it, which means there's nothing else to push through into that dropper so that this thing won't change state. But when I hit the off button, of course, that powers this dropper, which will chuck the item back over into this dropper over here, meaning that we don't get an output through the comparator, meaning that we don't get an output through into the lamp. That there is a simple RSNOR Latch design, and I think it's very useful. For my next challenge, I want you to create a toggleable one-tick clock, which is a super fast redstone clock. You know, where the redstone turns on and off every tick. That's basically how fast I want you to make it. And the way that I want you to do it is I want you to use a comparator. Now, there are probably going to be a few of you sat there scratching your heads on this one. Once again, probably suggest Googling it if you are getting a little bit stuck. But give it a go and see what you come up with. Now, this really quick redstone clock uses a little bit of comparator trickery to work, and I'm going to try my best to explain this one, despite the fact that it's probably going to be a big muddle of words. But anyway, let's give it a go. So what we've got here is we've got a block that is powering our comparator, and that means that this comparator is outputting a signal strength of 15. That's the full signal strength. Now, that signal strength travels around like this and back into the side of the comparator, which is currently in subtract mode. Now, the reason that that's important is because that then means that that signal strength there is subtracted from our input signal strength, which means our output signal strength is now significantly lower, but that signal strength then travels around like this and is once again subtracted from our input signal strength, meaning that we then have a much higher output signal strength, which then runs around like this, and then we get the low signal strength, then it runs around like this, and we get the high signal strength, and so on and so forth, and we end up with a really fast redstone clock. I'm sure that probably didn't make sense to most of you. If it did make sense, then I'm extremely happy, but there will be links down in the description that probably do a better job. Your next challenge is to create a 2x2 hidden flush piston door. Now, what this means is that we've got these blocks in the wall right here. When we flick the lever, these blocks will be retracted backwards, then they will open up, revealing a secret entrance. Sounds quite easy, but it's actually a little bit complicated, so I'll let you crack on with that one, and I'll show you what I've got. I will admit I've been a little bit cheaty with my redstone design here. I've actually moved the input location, but this one is so simple that it would be wrong of me not to show you. So first off, with the timing, we power the central section first, then we power the outer sections, which might sound a little bit strange, but the reason that we're doing that is because we power this section here, then we power these pistons, which means that these pistons extend, pushing these pistons under the powered area, meaning they all extend. Okay, that means that we have got the closing done, but then on the opening, the way that we want it to work is we want these pistons in the center to retract first, and then these pistons retract so that they can pull the blocks back. And that basically leaves us with a fully functioning system, and as you can see, it's really simple in terms of redstone. Now, if you're sat there wondering why these pistons get powered as well, that's actually using the bud concept, or the quasi-connectivity that we featured at the start of this video, and it works absolute wonders in designs like this one. Now I want you guys to create a double piston extender, and it must fully retract the block up at the front. Now, to help you guys out, I'm actually going to show you the piston firing sequence here, which should lend you guys a bit of a hand. So first off, you want to extend the back piston, then the front piston, and that's fine. You've got the extension done. Then for the retraction, it's a tiny bit more complicated because you want to retract that one first, then that one, then you want to fire the middle one so that you fully retract the block. Funnily enough, this relatively complicated piston firing sequence can be accomplished using a really simple little redstone circuit. So as you can see here, we flick the lever, everything extends, we flick it again, everything retracts. And the reason that this one works is because, first off, this piston here extends, that pushes this piston in front of this redstone right here, and of course that's already powered, meaning that this piston up at the front will extend as well, as you can see on the extension. And then as far as the retraction is concerned, this piston will retract first, then this piston will retract, and that will pull this piston back here just in time to get the last bit of power from this repeater, meaning that it grabs that block, then pulls it back as well, as you can see from this. Really simple little circuit, would highly suggest remembering that one because it saved my life many times. These two final ones involve redstone builds that have been featured throughout this entire video, and they sort of combine them together and make you think about how you're going to do it. So this first one is, I want you to detect when a sapling is placed and then auto bone meal it. Now I'm going to give you guys a bit of a hint here. This involves the use of a bud flop and also that 1-tick toggleable redstone clock. Crack on with it, and then I'll show you the solution. So this is the redstone design that I've ended up with, and I have to say that was actually a little bit more challenging than I first imagined. But over here we have got our bud flop, then we have got our comparator clock, and let's just see if everything works. If you chuck down our sapling here, you can see it is getting bone mealed. Unfortunately, nothing is really growing apart from this enormous tree, and that is because that block is in the way. But the system is now working. So all that happens there is when we place down a sapling, our bud flop toggles, meaning that our comparator clock turns on, our dispenser turns on, chucking out all of the bone meal, and then of course when our tree grows, the bud flop toggles off, meaning that our comparator clock turns off as well. For the final challenge, I want you to make a 5-button combination lock using RSNOR latches, and the order of pressing does not matter. Now the reason that that's very important is because otherwise that will make it very complicated indeed. So for example, we could set it up so that our combination is that button has to have been pressed, that button has to have been pressed, and that button has to have been pressed, and it doesn't matter what way around we do it. So say for example we reset it and then we hit this one, and this one, that would still work absolutely fine. If we had to hit it in a specific order, for example a bit like this, then that would make the combination lock really quite difficult. They do exist, but they're a lot more complicated than what we're about to do. So try your best to work on this one. If you can't do it, don't worry because I've got the solution for you, but let's go. And here it is. So as you can see, we've got a line of RSNOR latches right here. We then have our reset circuit, then we've got ourselves an AND gate. Now, for those of you who did the 10 redstone projects for beginners, you will probably recognize that this sort of circuit here from the last combination lock that we did at the end of that video. They're pretty much the same, to be honest with you. These RSNOR latches just act like the levers, and then we get our different inputs from that one. So to do our combination, we just have to hit this button right here, and as you can see, that will turn off that redstone torch. We hit this button right here, that will turn off that redstone torch, and we hit this button right here, that will turn off that redstone torch, turning off this entire redstone line, meaning this redstone torch turns on. But for example, if we get the wrong combination, we hit this button right here, then that will turn everything on, and that means that everything is incorrect. And of course we can reset that will put it back to its default values, and then we can just go back down the line like this, putting in our combination, and we get everything correct. So there we go. It's actually really quite simple, it just seems quite complex in the brain. So there we have it, ladies and gents. That rounds up today's video on 10 redstone projects for novices. I hope that you found it enjoyable, and I hope that you learned a thing or two. Let me know down in the comment section if you enjoy the format of these videos. But unfortunately, ladies and gents, that is all I've got time for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button, and if you really loved it, then make sure to subscribe. But thanks for watching, guys. This has been Mumbo, and I'm out. I'll see you later.